For anyone tuning in and who hasn't been super in step with us, we recently released a new website design on lamina1.com, and Rebecca wrote a Medium post last week kind of explaining, our thoughts for the Lamina One brand and what we've been rolling out. I'm posting it in the chat right now, but yeah, Rebecca would love to hear from you. What was the reason for, rolling out this brand identity, and what are we hoping to get out of it?
Like the brand wasn't really changed as much as it was just established. So, I mean, look, whenever a group of people come together to stand up something quickly, they run rightfully at engineering or hiring or product definition, which you need to do. But like you have a name, maybe you pull a few visuals off the internet, and you have a shared passion between a few folks. But as you scale and you adapt and the market challenges you, it becomes really important for you to remember why this company was formed in the first place and communicate that consistently. So, what do you want to represent? Who or what purpose are you serving in the world? And that brand, the establishment of the values and the sort of truth at the center of it ensures that you don't lose your way, even as you pivot, the product at times to better serve an audience. It ensures that you hire right and you fire people that don't follow, and understand and uphold your values. I mean, for any company, like your unique ownable strategy is a combination of market demand and identity. And so this step was just about the visualization and the language around that. And we wanted to send a strong message to creators that we value what they value, the fidelity that has made them successful.
Follow-up question to that from Alchemist19 asks, sort of referencing to the blog that I just posted in the chat. So how do you know, quote unquote, when you know who you are and what you stand for when you're building a new brand? You mentioned sort of in the blog post that, we didn't want to roll this out until we really had solidified, what is Lamina One? What do we stand for? What are we doing? And, I would love for you to kind of help us kind of answer what that process was like from the inside.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bloated process. It's a series of questions that you ask the founding team. And you often find in asking them that there isn't alignment in all places and not everybody's on the same page, which is equally important. But ultimately, you find like a common thread among everybody that's there. Like, why do we care? Why do we show up every day? And I'm a big believer that, it must be based on some sort of, real truth, usually rooted in engineering or product or values, which for us is that we're a framework for you all. So you probably noticed with the logo, it is Lamina One. I mean, it's the L and the one. When they come together, they form a portal or like a doorway to another world, which is, obviously a nod to the metaverse and to creators and the types of worlds that you create and welcome people into. But when they expand, they also become sort of a framework just to showcase others, because it's not, about us. And even though that's really simple, it's hard to design something really elegant and really simple that also holds up, and holds true. So, I mean, we're technologists for sure, but we value creative work, we value humanity, and we want to lift it up and support it. And like ultimately, I've been in a bunch of companies where they've gone through really, really difficult phases of laying people off in mass or products failing or things that hurt. But when things get hard, and they inevitably do, the reason why people stay is because they believe in the mission and they take pride in it. So really, it's about finding what that is, and you ask a lot of questions of the founding team, and then you find that common thread. But it's not like you don't have to have these multi-million-dollar agency engagements and stuff. It usually doesn't even get you close to what you want, and then you don't even recognize the company when you get there.
Dave MN asks, what is the new mission of Lamina One, and how did you get there?
Your vision is something huge, like along the lines of like, we're going to change the world, um, something that you could wake up every day and say that you haven't achieved, but something that, will always inspire you. That's usually where companies place their vision. The mission is usually something more grounded and kind of near-term action that you can measure yourself against. So, for us, obviously, that's like, all right, well, if you're really going to change the internet for the better, and support creators in the open metaverse, how are you going to do that? Well, we're going to do it by delivering a layer 1 protocol and API and creator tooling that allows, for people to do this in a way that is efficient and economical and easy to use and protects performance and experiences. And so that's sort of the general way that you approach those things. And obviously we intend to use that to empower this kind of new generation of interconnected immersive experiences across specifically gaming, entertainment, and fashion.
Kind of related to that, CQR asks, what's your strategy to attract more projects and creators building on Lamina 1?
Specifically, it's a good question. I'm glad somebody asked it. Our portfolio strategy on the ecosystem side, particularly when it comes to content, is like we're mirroring investment overall in these kind of interconnected metaverse experiences. So, 40% of the portfolio that we're targeting would be gaming projects, to launch on the chain. 40% would be gaming, 20% would be fashion. Fashion is super active, and it also kind of cuts across a lot of these other things. 20% would be entertainment, which we group as music and film projects, short film projects. There's some super interesting stuff going on there too. And then 20% would be this kind of brand and agency approach. So like, when you talk to a lot of the agencies that are coming up with creative campaigns and that are advising companies on how to evolve their e-com strategies and like their sales channels and whatnot, being able to understand what they go through and advise on those concepts and then provide developer tools in a chain that is like really performant for them is really helpful. It's just a much more efficient way to approach things than to go straight at the brands individually, because the brands individually, sometimes you end up getting like, I'm sure it's why you guys have seen a lot of projects that it's like, why would they where you ask yourself, like, why would they do that? Like, why did the company invest in standing up that kind of an experience in a virtual environment? Like, what sense does that make? And it's not, they're not good and they don't last a long time and they're not really thought of for the long haul. So they're kind of a letdown and it hurts the whole market. It's part of the discovery process, but when you don't, and you go like directly to the brand, sometimes it's hard to really scale or create something of meaning. So we'll probably take a different approach to that than a lot of other projects. And then we announced 11 partners as part of our early access program. I think we have 13 now, and those are across creator tooling projects, creative projects, and then those that kind of reflect that portfolio strategy that I mentioned around gaming, fashion, entertainment, that split, as well as the diversity and the health of projects that we want to see in the market. That's really our chance to model it. And that early access program is super important because it gives us early insights across the critical areas of development into like, is our chain performant? Is it designed in a way where people are going to use it? Like, does the gaming community see the value of it versus some of the other things that they're using? I mean, we talked to a really highly esteemed, really well-known game dev the other day, raised a bunch of money, and founder that raised a bunch of money for a new project. And they said to us, like, look, we try to touch blockchain as little as humanly possible. So it was a good signal that there's still a lot of greenfield there in terms of improving things. So that's sort of the high level portfolio strategy, but I also say like, we're very interested in bringing high quality Web2 game designers on board. And there's a lot of skepticism there, but they design they design the best projects. They design the communities where people stick around. So those that understand how to build compelling mechanics, loops, and reward systems, NFT projects that hold their value beyond initial sort of trading, pump and dump, PFP type schemes, will work with brands to ensure that their NFT projects, that tie together retail, online and offline, have lasting value and a long tail strategy and gamification. We often advise on those concepts. We think the music space is prime and has huge potential, and we love what companies like Matter and Medallion and Aokiverse are doing. Internationally, like the sentiment for crypto and metaverse is actually it's pretty low in the US at the moment, which is a bummer, but it's just sort of the reality. So I think we'll focus on emerging markets and those that are really embracing those things, like Asia, Africa, India. And then the strategy is kind of to look at these deep embedded strategic plays versus one-offs. So, where is cloud, AI, gaming, and discoverability all coming together, and we can establish ourselves as the preferred chain with those providers.
We've got an anonymous question in this week that's asking, where is the LAMINA1 team located?
Well, thanks for the easy question. That's good. Distributed, but with a significant kind of cohort in LA, given the strength of the creative community here. But we have people in the Caymans, we have people in Miami, we have people in Austin. We're still small, but we're pretty distributed at the moment. But the goal is to have this, kind of headquarters, if you will, in Los Angeles, because there's so many creative and like interesting projects that are born out of here.
Angelica Pozo 862 asks, how much input does Neal Stephenson provide in this project?
Well, I can tell you, I mean, he's why I joined, because I know him well, and I worked with him at Magically. But I talk to Neal nearly every day. He's a very high integrity, authentic, and brilliant man, and he cares very, very much about delivering on his promise. Like there is no world in which Neal would license out his name for arm's length involvement in a product that he didn't care about, that might be profitable. Like he is just not that person. He writes in the morning, and we want him to do that. Like we know enough to disturb him. That's a good thing. We need him to do envisioning. That's important. And he's at his best when he's envisioning how things could be, how they can improve, and we benefit from that. He comes to our engineering stand-ups. Like Neal loves that part. He loves to dig in. He plays around in game engines all the time. He's playing with AI all the time. He's very passionate about certain parts of the product, certainly like royalty payments and being carbon negative, and he weighs in on those a lot. But like, we don't ask him to drive BD or sales on a daily basis, because that wouldn't be the right application of his talents. So, but he is very, very much involved.
We've got a next one coming up is from Major Ram Retriever, who asks, what do you think about the market now for blockchain or Web3 startups? And sort of relatedly, AVB797 asks, how do you attract investors to be interested in LAMINA1? We all know that some investors only focus on, short-term prices rather than long-term gain.
Really tough. I mean, you guys are in it too. It's been a really rough, 6 to 9 months for the market, and not just for crypto projects or blockchain projects, but also for the metaverse. With it was kind of ironic to me that when Facebook kind of commandeered the term and started driving at the metaverse, while no one really thought that was the right, like Horizons, for example, was necessarily going to be the vision that won, and no one really thought that closed ecosystem approach was the right way to go. Somehow, when they announced that they were pulling back on those efforts, everyone went, "Oh my God, the metaverse is dead," and which is just couldn't be further from the truth. And sure, there were projects like Instagram that set out with Polygon, and then pulled back, and everybody was like, what does this mean? And my response was, I mean, it doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, I don't even know why they did it. It doesn't really benefit them to take that approach. So that's what I mean by some of those really insincere, sort of thinly veiled attempts at getting into this game. So, I mean, it's been a rough six months. I think talk about, like investment. Okay, so for example, one of the things we heard a lot is that there were a lot of investors who invested in Web3 games really heavily, and they were really frustrated with the longevity of those communities or where they went and how they turned out. But they were also really dismissive of what it takes to build those communities. We've done some research on this, and there's a ton of research out there about it. Like, why is the lifetime value of somebody in a Web2 game so much higher? It's because, people play those experiences for joy, for stress relief, for mental stimulation. Whereas if you look at the Web3 gamer, their primary motivation is to earn crypto. So they're just very, very different types. So, I mean, it was a little surprising to me when you heard sort of the level of disappointment about why didn't Web3 games work? And it was like, well, design. I mean, you were totally dismissive of what it takes to design really compelling experiences. Now, I think some of that's changing. There's some good people in the space that are starting to really, really exciting projects that are architected in the right way. But, and then, there were NFT projects that didn't really go anywhere, and investors in general were nervous because they had poured millions into projects that didn't take off. They'd poured millions and millions. I mean, I think, Aptos and Sui both raised close to $400 million. There was the SBF FTX sort of ripples through the industry, and then the safe stuff. The traditional VCs also took a hit in March. And then when the banks took a hit, Bitcoin rallied, but it didn't spread as much, to other projects. So there's just a lot of volatility in the space, and a lot of investors changed their thesis a little bit about how they invest in these projects. So it shifted from token only to being equity and token based. And the reason for that was to stay aligned with companies and their mission as they develop. So we've seen a lot of changes. You can't possibly learn like this in a bull market, that's for sure. So I think we benefit from that in the long run. But you got to find really high quality investors that see the long-term potential and aren't looking for a super quick win and to exit. That doesn't serve you well or the community well. And so we're pretty picky about that. But the global market is still really growing. I mean, I think it's expected to expand at a compound annual growth rate of, I think, like close to 48 or 50% maybe from 2023 to 2030. So there's still a rising demand for data privacy. There's still a rising demand for digital assets and how they're included across and distributed across the ecosystem, and cryptocurrency, the role that it plays in that. As 5G and 6G technologies come along, plus AI and standards, that'll contribute to growth, and it'll drive efficiency in the creation of those projects. So yeah, I mean, I think overall the outlook is positive, and I'd say that like the general thesis is that I've heard is that investors, for those of you that are working on projects, will start kind of writing again in Q3. And the bull market is maybe, another bull market is maybe 18 months out. I mean, that's sort of the general thesis at the moment.
Next question we have is from one of our users. Oh gosh, I'm apologizing for mispronouncing this if I've done, but Kusarenkot203 asks, what will be next after NFT testing on LAMINA1? So obviously for anyone listening in, we just finished up 3 weeks of NFT playground testing on L1. We're taking down the playground end of day today so that we can focus on some other key functionalities that we need to take care of as we round out our test net. But this one actually is for you, Will. So can you let us know, now that we've got a sort of big audience waiting with bated breath for the secret code that I'm going to drop in a couple of minutes here, but yeah, what's next after the NFT Playground?
Yeah, so I mean, we're working internally pretty heavily on really streamlining that wallet user experience, as we've talked about a few times. The current wallet experience is really tailored towards more of a DeFi experience. And we really want to kind of reimagine what a wallet, if we even continue to call it a wallet, is going to look like um, in the context of the metaverse. So part of what we're working on is streamlining that wallet UX. We're hoping that we can make some, quick and dirty changes to get out to the community for kind of feedback sooner rather than later. It is kind of a long form process with multiple iterations. So, this is something we're going to be working on well through beta into mainnet and, after. But I would say that's a big thing of what we're working on is improving the wallet user experience. I can't promise that you guys are going to be able to test that, in the next few weeks, but a major focus for us. Another one is that we're working hard on is going to be game engine integration. So Unreal Unity integration with some of our own tools and libraries that we're developing, but also with some partner tools and libraries. So that's something if you're more on the creator side of the equation, you'll be able to try plugging in our chain and Web3 technology generally into your experience pretty easily. So that'll be something to look forward to for those of you who are creators. And then meta chain development, or subnets as we've been calling them. This is something we're pretty close on in terms of being able to deliver some really easy to launch EVM meta chains. So I think that'll probably be the first thing that we'll be able to build some, community quests around. But yeah, I'd say like we're working on a lot of things in parallel, and if we can push some stuff out to you to get feedback in the short term, we will. But some of this stuff is going to be kind of like leaking into beta net because there's just a lot of work to do on it.
Thank you, Will. And for those who are waiting for the secret code, since we've got only about 5 minutes left, I just dropped it. Yes, see the chat if you're looking for the secret code, but we're gonna pack in a couple more questions towards the end as you all kind of get ready for that. So, Anon asks another question for you, Will. Can you give us a sneak peek on what subnet testing will look like? Should we be looking for a quote-unquote gang of validators to put together, say, the Cosa Nostra Pizza 3569 subnet? Winky face.
I'll join that gang. Yeah, so it's a good question. I think subnet testing is going to look a little different depending on who you are. So those of you who are kind of just coming as a metaverse user, will obviously be testing some of the complexities and edge cases that emerge around the introduction of meta chains and subnets within the wallet experience. So currently, all the actions you do within the wallet experience are done kind of between the CX and P chains, as you guys are probably, unfortunately, painfully aware. So it just gets even more complicated when you add in, additional chains past the XC and P chains. So that's part of that kind of streamlined user experience process I was talking about earlier. We're really trying to simplify transactions within and across any chain, whether it's the primary chains or subnet chains. We want to make it so that as much of that complexity is hidden as is practical for those of you who don't want to see it. Of course, if you're a power user and you really like digging into the intricacies of it all, then that'll be available for you. But we're really trying, as I said before, trying to cater this to metaverse users, and so a lot of them are new to Web3 and don't want to see that complexity. So for users, that's going to be the main thing we want you guys to test, is like this ability to transact within and across meta chains and subnets. If you're a validator, then we're going to be testing the onboarding process for you to volunteer or participate in the validation of new subnets. Currently, it's a fairly involved social process. And so one thing we're playing around with is the idea of kind of a validator marketplace for subnets and metachains, where, if you're a validator and you're going to want to be validators within potential subnets, then you can kind of join a marketplace. And when you spin up a subnet as a creator, you'd be able to select groups from that marketplace that fit your needs. And it kind of just automates and makes the process a bit more intuitive. But in the short term, we're going to be taking the kind of more manual approach of you actually having to select which subnets you want to validate for and joining them. So if you're a validator, that's what you're going to be doing. Yeah, if you want to join a group or a gang of validators that, validates multiple subnets, that would be cool. You're welcome to do that. And then for those of you who are creators, as I said, and you're, hopefully plugging into some of the creator tools we're developing right now, the game engine SDKs, we're going to be hoping, or we hope that you'll launch a subnet and use that as your kind of EVM environment within those game engine SDKs. So that'll give you that dedicated blockchain infrastructure we keep talking about, where, you'll have somewhere between 200 and 500 transactions per second within an EVM environment that's just totally dedicated to you and your experience. And then you get to, select the economics of that environment as well as the governance of that environment. So it should be a powerful learning experience for both of us as you guys play around with that functionality. But yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. So it depends on who you are and what you're trying to do. We'll have a lot of different opportunities for you to participate in subnets. They might not all release at the same time, and some of them might not be quests. Like some of them will, specifically around creators. I just don't know if there's, and if I'm wrong, I'll be happy to be wrong and we can create some quests here. But I don't know if we're gonna make a quest where we get the entire community to start spinning up Unreal experiences and game engine worlds that plug into our chain. But, if you want to do that, reach out to us and we'll try to help you as much as we can.
Thanks so much, Will. Well, it's 12:01 p.m. I will say we got a bunch of other really fantastic questions in the chat feed, of course, like right as we were all talking and chatting, but I think that that's a good sign for us that we definitely have to do this again. I think a lot of these questions were really great, especially compared to some of the more like hardcore engineering AMAs we've had recently. So we really appreciate you all joining us. Rebecca, if there's anything else you want to add on to the end and to say goodbye, feel free. And for those not in the chat feed and listening in a little bit later, our secret code for this week is AMA 421 with 2 exclamation points at the end. The AMA is capitalized, so that'll be up through Monday. So if you are here looking for the secret code or listening in a little bit later, limited time XP. But yeah, thank you. And Rebecca, I'll hand it off to you for the final sign off. In fact, I think she may have already hopped off because she is an incredibly busy CEO and executive. So I will do the final sign off. Thank you all so much for joining us. Again, anyone who asked a question that didn't get answered, I have a list of thousands of questions from the community, and we host these every Friday. And we'll make sure to get to a bunch of your questions later on. Thanks, everyone.